Good morning, CSA. I am Reverend Mignonne, and it is my pleasure to be here today. And today, I challenge you to reach higher through the practice of compassion. You know, the thing that I love about science of mind is that it draws the simple truths and the spiritual truths from all major traditions. And today, I am going to work from the Buddhism, and I'm going to draw my truth from the Dalai Llama, the 14th Dalai Lama, and I'm going to use some of his words. And for me, I walk this walk of compassion, and I try to do it every single day. And how do I do that? I try to put myself in the place of others' shoes. And that's what I try to do. So this practice means that we approach everyone that we meet with the energy of love and with the energy of support. Now, Ernest Holmes has said that the only way that we can realize our divinity is through the expression of our humanity. And one way that you can clearly see how you express as the divine is in times of crisis. You know, it's a little bit like what Mr. Rogers said. In times of trouble, look for the helpers. There's always helpers. And in the recent hurricanes in Louisiana, it was neighbor helping neighbor. It was who were stranded by the floodwaters, and they called themselves the Cajun Navy. They were private citizens with boats, and they said, we're all in this together, you know? Or maybe it's that compassionate act that you do when your heart goes out to the earthquake victims in Haiti and you just give a donation. Or it could be that almost forgotten act of compassion. On 9/11, planes were diverted from LaGuardia and from JFK, and the community of Gander, Newfoundland in Canada opened their homes and their hearts to those passengers. And as they were doing that, strangers helping one another, they realized their oneness, creating good for all. You know, compassion reinforces our connection to each other. Compassion can broaden our understanding of our individual differences. I mean, the way we express our culture, our gender, our sexuality. So yeah, we're one big human family, but we're made so beautifully diverse in our life experiences. And this practice of compassion can help us appreciate our differences. Compassion celebrates our connection to each other and to that one infinite divine source. That energy that's behind everything. You know, I want to be like Marshall Rosenberg. And he wrote in a book, If the Buddha Got Stuck, right? So, and what he said is, what I want is in my life is compassion, a flow between myself and others based on a mutual giving of the heart. So I'm walking this path of compassion. And my challenge to you is to join me on this road, to join me for a greater experience of oneness, a greater experience of love, a greater experience of joy. You know, in Science of Mind, we believe that if you change your thinking, you change your life. And Buddhism also believes that by training your mind, you can achieve freedom. So in Buddhism, there are 4 states of consciousness, 4 states of mind, and they're called the 4 immeasurables. They're virtuous qualities, and they're called immeasurable because they are directed towards an immeasurable number of beings, and because the good that you experience by cultivating these states of mind is immeasurable. So I just want to talk briefly about these 4 states. The first state is boundless equanimity. And yeah, it's a big word. I had to look it up myself. So it's to realize that we're all equal, that we work to be free of prejudice and preference. We learn to know things as they are, and we treasure our loved ones the same way we treasure someone we don't know, and the same way we treasure someone that we might consider our enemy. So that's the first one. It's sometimes called non-attachment. So no prejudice, no preference. We work towards having no prejudice and no preference. The second state of mind is loving kindness. And that's to know that your happiness has the same weight as my happiness. And the loving kindness is the desire for happiness for all sentient beings, for everyone. This third is sympathetic joy. It's the delight in the happiness of others. So the happier you are, the happier I am. So I tell you, if you get a car, I'm happy for you. If you get a new partner, I'm happy for you. If you get a new job, I'm happy for you. The happier you are, the happier I am. You know why? Because what I know is that we are inseparable, that you and I are one, and that your happiness is indeed my happiness. And so the fourth one is compassion, and that's where we're going to spend most of the time today. Compassion is where we cultivate seeing the needs of others by realizing intense suffering of others, by seeing the pain or the struggle of others. So I have a desire for that pain or that struggle to be removed. That is compassion. So equanimity, loving kindness, sympathetic joy, compassion, these are the qualities that we want to emulate. And these are the things we want in our minds. That's the way we want to lift our consciousness. Now, one of the ways that Buddhists practice compassion is through meditation and prayer. And one example of the prayer is this: may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. You all probably know this one, right? May all beings be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. And may they never be separated from that sacred joy that is beyond suffering. And may they rest in the equanimity free of grasping hatred and ignorance. And may they be aware of the equality of all that lives. So this focus on compassion, I'll share 2 examples of folks who have exemplified compassion, and then how you and I can increase our practice of compassion. But first, wait a minute. Mignonne, you're losing me at suffering, right? We're flying to mind. We don't believe in this necessary thing, suffering. We take the spiritual truths, the good of what there is, right? Not all of it. So I'm going to redefine that first part of compassion. And I want to translate to suffer with into the idea of to feel with. So this is not a feeling of pity. It's not a feeling of looking down upon someone, because remember, our first state of mind that we want is equanimity. Everybody's equal. So this is not about looking down. This is about being with, seeing, and acknowledging our mutual humanity. It's a meeting place of 2 equals. Now, again, Mr. Rogers, whom many of you may not know, was a Presbyterian priest, says there's no normal life that is free of pain, and it is wrestling with our problems that can be an impetus for our growth. So when we practice compassion, we understand that we are one, that we all have these things. And that idea is that idea of suffering with, the idea that, something might go wrong in your life. That is what suffering is. So there's 2 parts: to feel with, to put yourself in the place of another. And the second is to take action. And it's a loving act. It's an act of loving kindness. The Buddha said that if you see a person who's being crushed by a rock, the idea is not to just get under the rock and feel the way they're feeling, but it is to help remove the rock. So through compassionate acts, we realize our connectedness to one another and our connection to the divine. Compassion is expressed in many ways, and I'd like to tell you the story of the Bodhisattva Kuan Yin. Yes, Kuan Yin, who we have a statue of right back there in the room. Now, as Science of Mind, we do not pray to Kuan Yin, but we do invite that spirit and that energy into our lives. And she is the goddess of compassion. And that really means, Kuan Yin means the one who hears the sounds of the world. Now, Kuan Yin can be a little gender fluid, but the pronouns I'm going to use is she, her, as they do in many Eastern countries. The legends about Kuan Yin are over 2,000 years old. But here's the most renowned. They say that when she was standing at heaven's door, she heard the cry of humanity, and she decided that she could not enter heaven until mankind was free of suffering. So in trying to understand the need of mankind, it is said that her head split into 11 pieces, and in trying to reach out to mankind, she developed 1,000 eyes and 1,000 arms, trying to embrace all of mankind. Kuan Yin is compared to the Virgin Mary in Christianity, and she represents the two parts of compassion. That's what she does for me. She represents to feel with, and then she does something. She bound her own freedom to that of mankind. Now, I'm not Kuan Yin, but as I walk this path of compassion, I definitely try to embody that spirit. I face several situations that allow me to sit with, to feel with, to see and to hear another. And this is a compassionate act. You know, I've met people who've taken care of their dying parent. I've sat with someone whose child is on drugs. And I've listened to stories of people who have been betrayed by their partners. But also, I have had to sit with myself. I've had to love and to forgive myself for saying or doing something that caused harm or feelings of separation between myself and someone else. And these are the situations in Buddhism that Buddhism says are suffering. These are the universals that all of humanity goes through: dying, growing old, heartbreak. So I believe in that going through these times, though, that's when we actually forget that we are separate from that one infinite source. So one way to practice compassion is to sit with someone and to remind them of their divinity, right? You can't save them. The job is not to save the other, but just to sit with them without judgment. You see, the major block to compassion is the judgment in our minds. Judgment is the primary tool of separation. One powerful, compassionate act is to see the other, to feel with the other, to see, feel, and be with the other. Well, I know that everybody's really thinking about September 11th, or many people may be thinking about September 11th, 2001. But a date that stands out in my mind, in my life, is September 21st, 2016. So why is September 21st, 2016 so important to me? Well, I've been a diversity trainer for over 15 years, but on September 21st, I was unwittingly a part of an act of compassion, and it was one of the greatest compassionate acts that there could be. Now I'm going to get to it, but let me just talk a little bit about what was happening on September 21st, 2016. On the television, there were mostly images of Black people getting killed, Terrence Crusher in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and then there was an outpouring of emotion in the streets that some people might call riots. There was Kenneth Lamont Scott shot dead in Charlottesville, and those riots took place. And for me, it felt like the country was coming apart at its seams, and that all you saw were images of Black people getting killed, hurt, dismissed. However, there was one show that was broadcast on nationwide TV, and the mantra was simply, be kind to one another. Be kind to one another. On September the 21st, 2016, 3 Black people were randomly chosen from Ellen DeGeneres' audience. I was in that audience, and it was amazing to be chosen. But it was even more amazing to be a part of this compassionate act. Because what she did was she asked us silly questions that 2 of us got wrong. I got mine wrong, so I'll let you know what the question was so it doesn't reek in your mind. She said, what continues to grow as you grow older? And I spoke from my experience. Okay, yeah, you know it. I see somebody out there who's pointing to the answers. But in my experience, it was my feet and my brain. I was convinced that my feet were growing. She looked at me and she laughed, And the disclaimer to all those educational credits I have, I did not know the answer, but I'm going to share it with you now. It is your nose and your ears because of the cartilage. So we laughed. We had a fun time. We were experiencing joy. She did that with two other folks and a Canadian couple, because I'm sure it was edited for Canada. So, we were just having a lot of fun. And I believe that was a compassionate act, because all you saw were these images of blood and terror and death. And this show showed African Americans just being human. I believe that day Ellen was feeling with Black America, and that she used her TV show to show our humanity. And we saw for the first time Black people not under the weight of racism or sexism or homophobia. We were just having fun. And I believe that these images were a compassionate act. The Ellen show felt with us, acknowledging the heaviness of the time, and then they did something. They felt with, and then they did something. They broadcast positive images of a moment of joy, and those images reached over 2.6 million viewers. Henry David Thoreau says, "Could a greater miracle take place for us than to look through the eyes of each other for just an instant?" A compassionate act is easy, right? It can be as simple as giving someone a smile, or letting someone pass a car into a lane through heavy traffic. Or it can be as grand as working on issues of poverty, or feeding those who are hungry, or housing the unhoused. Compassion is feeling with and doing something. This idea of putting yourself in another's shoes, allowing yourself to feel with that person, to work with that person. I'm going to say it again, to work with that person. Tara Branch wrote a book called Radical Compassion, and she says, with true compassion, we feel each other's experiences as our own shared human vulnerability. The urge is not to help in doing good. The urge is to help because it's like tending a wound on our own body. In other words, or in the words of the Aboriginalist activist group from Queensland, if you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come here because you understand that your liberation is tied up with mine, then let us work together. The Dalai Lama takes it a step further than just between you and me. The Dalai Lama says that we can use this practice of compassion for global healing, healing the planet, for healing of all animals, and for the healing of each other, because the world is one, and nothing has exemplified our interconnectedness like this COVID-19. We realize that we are dependent upon one another for our very survival. And compassion, this practice, this walk that I'm walking, wishes happiness for me and for everyone else. That's what this practice is. One of the most compassionate figures I've run into in my work and in my studies is Father Gregory Boyle. He's from the Catholic tradition, and he's the founder of Homeboys Industries in Los Angeles, which is one of the largest gang prevention programs in the state. Father Gregory Boyle says that the measure of our compassion lies not in our service to those on the margins, but in our willingness to see ourselves in kinship with them, in mutuality. In other words, the measure of our compassion is to see our oneness. So finally, what do we have to do to cultivate this compassion in our lives? Well, I'll tell you something. You can't give away something you don't have. So compassion starts with self. And what does that mean? How do I practice self-compassion? If you're having a bad moment, if you're having a bad time, you just know that everything is as it should be. Sit with those emotions. Think to yourself, what do I need to hear in this moment? Maybe it is, I am good enough, or I'm doing the best I can. You know, that loving kindness that we send out to everyone else, we got to turn it around and send it back to ourselves. And notice your self-talk. Try to suspend your self-judgment. Because when you love and accept yourself, you try to do that without judgment or criticism. Just try to silence as much as you can that inner critic. Another thing that we can do, besides turning that love and kindness towards ourselves, is to find opportunities or situations to put ourselves in the shoes of someone else. It just so happens that this afternoon, you have an opportunity to practice compassion right here with other members of this congregation and members of people across the nation, because this afternoon we are starting something called Conversations About Anti-Racism, and it's hosted by the Ujima Ministry, and it's happening right after this service. It is an opportunity to do compassionate listening. It's an opportunity to be a compassionate witness. It's an opportunity to feel with, and then you can do something. But as many of you know, I am so very happy to have this breath in my body, that I am on the road to recovery, that I was out of, glad to have this microphone, but feeling confident that I could project without it. So I've just gotten out of the hospital a couple of months ago, a very emergency situation. And I happen to be the recipient of some very compassionate acts. When I was there, there were people who brought me food to my home in the early days after I'd gotten out of the ICU. There were people who sat with me and who just gave me their presence. And again, that is a compassionate act. And then what I've done in return, and I hope that they have received it fully, is that I have thanked them. I have practiced that practice of gratitude, and that also expands your heart and expands compassion. So I have thanked them for being there, thanked them for bringing the food, thanked them for caring about what was going on. Now, I'm still on that road to recovery, and I will be probably for a little while. And if you know me, you know I love to travel, but I can't travel. And another compassionate act that someone has done is, I have a friend, and she's camping on the coast of Washington, the northern coast of Washington. And knowing that I can't travel and that I'm sitting in 100-degree weather in Sacramento, she sent a little video. She sent a short video of the coastline and the waves and the sand, and just playing that, and just I'm thinking of you, nothing else. A person of few words anyway, but I'm thinking of you. And that is a compassionate act, just letting someone know that their presence means something to you in the world. But sometimes compassion can't be that. Sometimes it can be a little difficult, right? And the one thing I want to challenge you with is, as a practice of compassion, to give someone the benefit of the doubt. They say that you preach what you have to learn, right? So to give someone the benefit of the doubt. Say somebody's late, give them the benefit of the doubt. Say they've broken an agreement or haven't done something to your expectations. Giving them the benefit of the doubt is a compassionate act. It cultivates peace and happiness and joy and even clearer understanding between you and perhaps another. But finally, I just really challenge you to set an intention to practice compassion, to do compassionate acts in whatever way you feel that you'd like to do them in your everyday life. So that is my challenge to you, to walk with me through this world practicing compassion, because compassion, it absolutely makes our interconnectedness, our connectedness to each other and our connectedness to the one, a much clearer and broader experience. It is a way that we can bridge our differences and grow into a deeper understanding. And I promise you that if you walk this walk of compassion, you will have greater joy, greater love, greater wisdom, greater peace as a part of your life. Compassion is the gateway to oneness. Won't you join me on this walk today? Let's take this message into prayer. So just knowing that there is one and only one energy source that is back behind all, and that energy source is a source of love, compassion, and that energy source is expressed as me through my humanity and through my compassionate acts, and it's expressed in and as each and every person here through their humane and compassionate acts. And so I speak my word today that this world is lifted up by each and every person who sees this message, each and every person who takes this challenge, that this world is lifted up in love, in joy, in happiness, and in peace, in little ways and in big ways. And I am just so grateful. I am so grateful that we recognize our oneness with each other and our oneness with the divine. And so I release this word into the law, knowing that it is done. And together we say, and so it is.